Okay, let's talk about expenses. So one of the most important things you need to do as a business is track your spending. And that's where expenses comes in. This is where you track everything your business spends on. Well, with the exception of raw materials, the raw materials you use to create your physical products, that goes into store items. But every other thing goes into expenses. So we are talking about things like rent, salaries, equipment, and so on and so forth. So let's get into it. I'll show you how to create an expense. First of all, we'll create rent. So you go in and you say, let's say rent, and we'll select category as rent. And let's say the amount is 850,000. And now the period is how long the expense covers. So for rent, let's say we're paying it yearly, and we can start it as April, and we save it. Now the next thing you want to do is allocate the expense. This is where you're specifying what activities this expense consumes. Everything you spend on your business is for a particular activity, right? You're spending the money to do something. And so we have here all the activities for a baking business. And so for rent, what are you doing in your baking studio? You're doing some mixing and baking. You're doing some cooking. You're also packaging for customers. You're doing decoration there as well. It's also where you interact with customers, right? And so there's also a little bit of it that goes into non-production activity, right? Things that don't actually go into production. So we can save it. All right, and so that's rent. Let's add another one. Let's add salary. So let's add the salary, my salary as a manager, right? And we can put a salary. Let's say I get paid 300,000 every month, and yes, the period in this case would be month. So I'll select month, and I set it as recurring. Recurring means that you want the system to recreate the expense for you every month. So every month, this expense will be created afresh. And that's good because, for example, something like salary, that's the same, you're paying the same amount every month. So we set it as recurring. And here we are saying what activities does the salary consume? So what, in this case, what does the manager do in the business? So as the manager, I'm doing a lot of customer interaction and support. I also do a lot of decoration. I don't do so much mixing and baking, so I'll leave that as around 5 because my assistant does that for me. I also don't do so much cooking because I have assistants that does that for me. I do some packaging as well because I like to put the finishing touch. And I also spend a lot of my time doing non-production activities like managing records, managing admin, managing my staff, all that. This kind of captures my allocation for my expense as a salary, so I can save that. And just to add another salary, so we can add another staff salary. So let's say the assistant baker salary. And similarly, we save that as salary. Period is a month. Let's say the assistant baker earns 120,000. And it's also a recurring payment. To continue, this person spends a lot of their time doing mixing and baking. They also do some cooking. They also do some packaging and decoration, right? And so we can save that. Okay, cool. Another expense we could add is an equipment. So let's add an equipment, for example. So we can add a baking oven. And that will go under tools and equipment. Let's say I bought my baking oven for 400,000 naira. Now, period here is interesting, right? For here, we are setting how long you expect the equipment to last. What's the useful lifespan of the equipment? So, for example, for a baking oven, I'm expecting that I'll use it for 2 years before I need to start to replace it or begin to start to do repairs. The way I like to think about it is like, how long do I want to carry the cost of this baking oven? So if I buy a new equipment, how long do I want to carry the cost of my business? So for a baking oven, I want to carry the cost for 2 years so that even if the equipment is still functioning after 2 years, I've paid off the cost and everything I'm getting from it is profit. And so you can even set the month to maybe set it to October. And it's not a recurring payment because, it's a one-time payment. Continue. And yes, this is simple. Baking oven is used 100% for mixing and baking. And then save. Okay, so now you can see this particular expense, baking oven, you would see that the amount is split. The original cost was 400,000, but we split it across the 2 years. So you're only carrying 16,600 ish per month because it is spread across 2 years. And so we can say that our total expense here is 511,500. And finally, we can add an expense that has nothing to do with production. For example, we can add a cleaner pay. So let's say we get someone that comes in to pay for cleaning. Or we could even add something like Facebook ads. Maybe you pay for ads. That's also similar. So let's set the category to, you can set it to utility bills. Let's say you pay 40,000 naira for a cleaner to come in every month. And let's say that's a fixed payment every month. So we can set it to recurring, right? And it's monthly. And in this case, it's a completely non-production activity. So we don't set anything. We just leave it as is and we save, right? At the end of the day, if you go to the next tab for activities, you'll be able to see a breakdown of all the activities in your business, the total cost for them, and the cost per hour. The reason we are breaking it down into a cost per hour is so that later on, when I'm showing you how to calculate the cost of production for your product, this is going to be very useful because for each product, we're going to extrapolate the cost of production based on these activities. I'll show you that in the next session, so stick around.